So tonight's featured performer, you know him from the Howard Stern Show. You know him as a world-famous comedian, but you also know him as a comedian who's got the biggest cock on the East Coast. Ladies and gentlemen, Jackie the Joke Man, Martling.
You know, when you ask a comedian how do they want to be introduced and they give you a line like that, they're fucking around. Do you understand? Give him a round of applause. He did a good job. Now, he said I was on the radio, and he said I was a comedian, but he did not say I'm an author. We're here because I'm an author. You know, I'm going to sit down eventually, but I'll stand up to begin. First of all, give yourselves a nice round of applause for coming to Berlin, New Jersey, which is what the sign says. It's the home of Rita's ice cream shop that had 2 customers today. I stopped there twice. I appreciate Ellen and the gang. I thought this was going to be an interest. Turn this down a little bit, Keith, because I'm a loudmouth. I thought it'd be a little bit interesting, but this is way, way, way beyond interesting. I didn't say turn it off, you fucking idiot. But it's beyond fascinating, and I love all aspects of this, and it affected me so much. So I'm gonna do a few. You know, I'm gonna start this thing because I was telling them when I'm telling jokes, I know exactly where I am, and when I'm telling stories, I know exactly. But if I mix the 2 of them up, I have no idea how I am, and we could be here till 5 o'clock in the morning. So I don't want to screw up. So a lady goes in a drugstore and she says to the pharmacist, I need to buy some cyanide to kill my husband. He says, lady, I can't sell you cyanide to kill your husband. You'll go to jail, I'll go to jail, you're crazy. She reaches her purse, takes out a picture, hands it to the pharmacist, picture of her husband banging the pharmacist's wife. He says, you didn't tell me you had a prescription. I figure we should do a few jokes before I start yakking. So guys on an airplane, the airplane's taking off, and across the aisle is a woman breastfeeding her kid. And a couple hours later, they're coming for a landing, and she's breastfeeding the baby again. He says, excuse me, ma'am, I couldn't help but notice you were breastfeeding your child on takeoff, and now you're breastfeeding him again on landing. Is there a reason? She says, yes, I breastfeed my child on takeoff and landing so his ears won't pop. The guy says, fucking all these years I've been chewing gum. I will tell you, what a nice place. Now, listen. This is my favorite joke, so pretend I didn't say this, but give it every consideration, okay? Because it's my favorite, very favorite. Guy gets a job, so to celebrate, he gets a brand new suit and a pair of shiny new black patent leather shoes. He goes to a dance, asks a girl to dance. You know, I like a girl who wears polka dot panties. She says, how do you know I'm wearing polka dot panties? He says, I saw the reflection in my shiny new black patent leather shoes. Yes, another girl dance. You know, I like a girl who wears striped undies. How do you know I'm wearing striped undies? I saw the reflection in my shiny new black patent leather shoes. Yes, another girl dance. He says, what do you got on under that dress? She says, nothing. He says, phew, I thought I had a crack in my shiny new black. So, I have a book for sale. It's called The Joke Man, Bow to Stern, one of my better puns. I'm a nautical guy. I live on the water in Long Island. And bow to stern, it's my whole life story, so it's beginning to end. Bow to stern, front of the boat, back of the boat. I never did bow to Mr. Stern, so it's kind of a wink, wink. And it's a fun book. It's like 30 or 40% about me and my silly journey to get wherever I was going. and then 60% of is about how I got there and then dumped it. Okay, it's interesting. It's modular chapters. They're all headed by the year 1983, 1988, and so it's modular chunks. So you can read. Each chapter is 2 pages, 8 pages, 5 pages. So you can pick it up anywhere, and it's a self-contained thing. But it's chronological. It's fun. And if you're a Stern fan at all, it's a timeline of all of our lives. Like, oh, I know where I was during the Channel 9 show. Oh, I know where I was during that pay-per-view. So it'll be a thing anybody can spin off on. And if you're a comic or a performer, it's, it's the pitfalls and all the crap, The whole first chapter is about the family rumor that I'm related to Theodore Roosevelt, which is pretty fascinating. And hopefully this is going to flush somebody out, and we're going to find out once and for all. Because with DNA, there's no gray area. It's either the DNA matches or it doesn't match. So we'll find out. But being here is so interesting because I went through life like a pinball in a pinball machine, bouncing from this to that. I had no plan, no idea of even having a plan. I knew I was pretty smart, or I thought I was pretty smart, and I knew I wanted to have fun, and I knew I wasn't, I don't know if the word is normal. I just didn't walk in those shoes. I don't know it was good, bad, or otherwise. I don't know whether I had a really great family or a really shit family, but whatever it was that made me, that's how I came out. And, it's funny, when I started getting famous as a comic, when you get interviewed by, sometimes you got to talk to the likes of Chuck Darrow. And he's back there. And you start getting interviewed, people ask you the same questions. And they would always ask, were you the class clown? And I would always say no, because to me that was taking something on that I had never really earned, that I had never been appointed class clown. And then I was like, one day I realized the front of my first comedy album, I'm sitting in front of my 8th grade class picture, flipping the bird. And I said, wait a minute, maybe I was the class clown. And slowly but surely these things start to fall in place. And I went to Michigan State University, and I graduated in 1971 as a mechanical engineer, and I used my diploma to roll pot, okay? Never any intention to be an engineer. I was pretty smart. I knew I had to take a pretty difficult major if I wanted to get through school, else I would drink myself right out of there. So 5 years later, I graduated. 2 years after that, I finally got out of the college town. I got sober enough. And I was in a rock and roll band, and we weren't any good, but we did know how to smoke pot, drink, and get laid. And then I came back to New York and did the same thing in a 3-man group. And there was no plan. We had a band. There's all kinds of intricacies that make it a great story. I hope you'll buy the book because it's so... You can't make this crap up. But we wound up making a record. And if you guys were big enough Stern Show fans, you remember the pot song, roll out the reefer, blah, 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 blah. Well, that was a song that my band made. And we made it at a recording studio that was owned by one of the other people that played in the same bar on a different night. To give you an indication how I stick to people's feet like gum on their shoe, the guy that owned that recording studio a month ago married my sister, okay? And I'm not making that up. Dear, dear friend for decades. But I learned just enough. I realized that any idiot could have an album. You think, somebody got a record deal. Somebody got a big blah, blah, blah. I had never had any dreams of being a comic. I always thought a comic had to be chosen by God. I never knew it was a learned thing, like television, radio. It's a learned thing. You always thought, you had to be born into that, like royalty. And I learned that any idiot could have an album. All you had to do was have a tape and enough money to get them printed, and it was that simple. So I learned just enough to know how to record. And at the end of the 70s, I'm sure there's a lot of musicians here. I was in a 3-man group. And at the end of we were terrible. We were 30 years old. We were making no money. And we weren't any good. We were fun, but we weren't any good. At the end of one of our gigs, the other 2 guys in the 3-man band said, Jackie, we're going to leave the band and start our own band. And I said, guys, I'm not a rocket scientist, but if there's 3 guys in a group and 2 of them leave the that's kicking me out of the fucking band. But actually, it was more close to the truth because I wrote all the songs, and that weren't good, but I wrote all the songs, and I told most of the jokes. And I had accumulated all these jokes, and I never learned jokes to become a comedian. I started telling jokes. It's all in the book. You got to read about this. In 3rd grade, I heard a dirty joke, and they started sticking to my head. But I never knew that everybody else, I figured you're a guy. You were raised in America. You know all these jokes. You were raised in America. You know all these jokes. Years later, I found out that nobody remembered the jokes. The people that remembered some of them remembered very few of them. Most people, they come to my shows and they say, I can't believe you're up there telling a joke. I knew the joke already, but I was already laughing when you got to the end before I realized, fuck, I already knew that joke, you know. And it was so interesting. And here I was with nothing to do. I'm playing my guitar and singing my songs in bars. There's no comedy scene on Long Island at all. I meet a couple comics. I'm having trouble skipping over all these details because they're all so funny. One of the guys, I met this guy, and I said, how'd you get to be a comedian? And he said, easy, I had cards printed up. I said, and to this day, I mean, this my friend Richie Minervini wound up, you know, he opens for Kevin James. I mean, he's a friend for 4 decades. But he invited me over to this place in Long Island where they had a variety show, Richard M. Dixon's White House Inn. There was actually a guy who surgically changed his face to look like Nixon. If you were going to change your face, you wouldn't, Jesus. But he wouldn't pay us. So we said, look, we got to do something. So me and Richie started a show in Huntington on Long Island, upstairs in a restaurant, and charged people to get in. And he emceed, and I finished the shows with my guitar and my jokes, and we had people coming over. And the guys started coming out from the city because they were making $50 instead of playing for a hamburger at Catch a Rising Star. That show lasted 15 years. After 2 years, it blossomed into the East Side Comedy Club that started the whole Long Island scene. But I'm up there each Tuesday, ending the show, and for an hour, I'm drinking and playing, and they're laughing, so I'm drinking more and playing more and telling jokes. The more they laughed, the more I drank, the harder they laughed. And I came home one night, and I said to my girlfriend, I said, they laughed every time I opened my mouth. I should make a record. She said, what are you looking at me for? Make a record. So, okay. So I borrowed $100 from 15 different people. Wasn't as easy as it sounds. What are you going to do? I'm going to be a comedy star. Oh, okay. And I had my 8th grade class picture. I put it on the wall. The first joke land is the attic of my mother's house. I'm up there. I got no money. I threw everything out of the attic and built the first joke land. Put my joke line in there. Now, I don't know if you guys know me at all. There's a phone line called 516-922-WINE that I started specifically to promote the comedy shows we did at that restaurant. It's 38 years later. And that line has been going nonstop ever since. I run into people, they say, hey, I used to call your line in the 80s. And I say, take out your cell phone and dial it. Yo, what are you talking? Dial it. 1-6-922-94. Hello, this is Jackie. You know how much I love it when you use your finger. They're like, oh, fuck, you know. But it's done miracles for me. I was on the air with Rick Dees by 1983 with my joke line. Rick Dees was the biggest DJ in California. He named me Jackie the Joke Man. And he used to tell his audiences in Los Angeles that number was Tom Selleck's home phone number. And people used to dial it. I'm not making this up. It's crazy. So I took the money. I had a picture. My 8th grade class picture was me giving the finger in the front. And I recorded myself. That's what I was telling Keith, because the whole recording thing's so amazing because you just do what you have to do. I had no money. I had no nothing. But I had just enough knowledge from working at the workshop recording studios. I had a Nakamichi cassette player, and I had a guitar amplifier, a Fender Vibroverb recorder amplifier, and I took a tap out of that into one side of the cassette recorder, and I had microphones hanging to get the crowd, and that went into the right side of the tape recorder, and I recorded my shows. And the people would laugh their asses off. I take it home with the cassette player and put it through a mixer and ride the levels up, you know, pull it down so you could hear me, and then ride it back up so you could hear the laughs, and put it on a reel-to-reel, learning as I'm going along with a razor. People nowadays can't believe that we did this with a razor blade. Nowadays, you have a sound program in your computer. You can go back 17 levels. Just, I fucked that up, I fucked that up, Me, I'm slicing, and if you slice and drop the tape, oh my fucking... You find it, you put it in backwards, hey, 2 Jews, I'm not even making it up. And all of a sudden I have a good laugh. I say, I have this joke already from another night, but this is such a good laugh. Not such a good laugh. So I make my first record. Thrilled is not the word. I mean, I went to Port Authority to pick up my 1,000 records. It was like I had given birth to quintuplets. It was like I was a high out of I couldn't freaking believe it. I come home. By now we got an East Side Comedy Club. I've been in comedy 6 months when I recorded the album. 2 months later, I got the stupid records. And I don't even know how to spell the word comedy yet. And I got my own LP. And I was the first guy out of any of them that had merch. We didn't even have the word merch. And I'd go and do a show, and after the show, people always, especially in the early days, comedy was so new. Like, people couldn't believe how exciting it was, how wonderful. Even the guys that sucked were wonderful because it was raw. And on the way out, people would say, I'm selling my records for $5. They couldn't buy them quick enough. And the other comics would stand there and make fun of me. Hey, look at that asshole with his records. Hey, what did you? And one day somebody goes, you know what? We each made $40, and he made an extra $80 with his records. Maybe he's not that stupid, right? So I have these albums. I'll never forget. This is one of my favorite stories in the book. It was I was recording my second album at the East Side Comedy Club. All kinds of stuff happened. And one night Jerry Seinfeld was on the bill, and I said, Jerry, I want to give you one of my records. He says, I love it. Thank you. I gave him my record, and the next night he came in and said, I'll never forget, he said, come. I walked in the kitchen, he said, I listened to your record. I listened to both sides. I played one side, lied on my bed, got up and flipped it over, listened to the other side. And I said, it's great. He says, I'll tell you, that was some night you had. I said, well, I got to tell you, it was the best of like 3 or 4 nights. He said, you can do that? To this day, I don't know whether he meant you can do that with sound or you can do that, And the other famous story about that, I was recording my second album at the East Side, and Eddie Murphy's there, and he goes, Jack, you have an album, and now you're making another album? I said, that's right. He says, I want to make an album. I said, I'm too busy, Eddie. So that's one of the great stories in the book. And maybe not a great story, but that's a story in the book. Well, that's how I wound. So I wound up with an album, and then I made a second album. And it's so hard to do this. It's so easy to tell jokes because you tell a joke and you get done telling another one. These stories go. My second album was called Goin' Ape. And I went to Lillian Costume Shop on Jericho Turnpike in Mineola on Long Island. I walked in, I said, look, you don't know me. I got no money. I'm making an album. It's called Goin' Ape. I need a gorilla suit. I'll give you a credit on the record. The woman looked at me like I was from Pluto and said, okay. She probably thought I was going to rob her if she said no. So I have the gorilla's head and the rest of it in a couple shopping bags, and me and my buddy go to the Bronx Zoo and go in with the... Now, if you're a kid and you're at the zoo, what's in the back of your mind? You're having fun, and it's great, but way in the back of your mind, wow, what if the animals ever got loose, right? I'm not making this, and I went behind whatever, I put on the gorilla suit, and I'm standing behind a tree. And, it's September, so the teachers are walking with third grade kids in tandem. And this fucking gorilla comes out. And my buddy took pictures. We didn't get any great pictures. The best picture is, of course, we got kicked out in about 5 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it was. And on the way out, I stood there at the ticket booth buying 2 tickets. So it looked like a gorilla was buying tickets to go into the zoo. It's really fun. It's on the cover of the album. But The greatest part of this is I've been telling this story for decades, but somewhere there's a kid who his whole life has told people I was at the Bronx Zoo and an ape came out. I mean, I did it to maybe 2 or 3 classes full of people, and I guess the word spread pretty quick to get that guy the hell out. It was so funny. So then I made a third album, and I just scraped and scraped and scraped. The whole time, the 70s, I was a songwriter. I wasn't any good at it, but I was a songwriter. I sent out songs and did everything I could. And in those days, I'd go to the printer, and I was on first name basis with all the printers because I had to make copies of the lyrics and copies of the cassettes, and I'd send them out and the songs weren't any good. And you go to the mailbox, and it's just, it had no right to be heartbreaking, but it was. And I was just crazed. And then at the age of 31, after the band broke up, I quit music. And it's Rodney Dangerfield's line. I said, I quit music. And to give you an idea how good I was doing, I was the only one who knew I quit, okay? And I just started doing that. And when I put out my first record, I gave them to everybody I saw. If I saw you and you said, oh, Jackie, I saw you at a comedy club, hey, take a record or buy a record. Or somebody says, oh, this DJ works at the local, I send him I can't even begin to imagine. I can't even begin to explain the imagination we had sending these things out. And I got the weirdest responses. I don't know if did anybody ever read Mad Magazine? I got back a hand-drawn cartoon by Don Martin. Remember Don Martin, Flea Flank? And he said, Jackie, you're an idiot. This is a great, the hand thing. I got a bottle of sipping whiskey from Jack Daniels, and they said something like, you need this, or something like that. Such a smattering. And I got an order from a mail order catalog in North Carolina. They bought records and cassettes and 8-tracks. Me and Nancy, my wife, we actually sat there and handmade 8-tracks. We made like 50 of them or whatever. And it was a small mail order house called Adam and Eve. And now it's like 5 blocks in Los Angeles, right? But they forgot me. But so I'm sending these things everywhere. And the stories are still coming back. Too many tangents. I was at a golf outing a couple of years ago. And this guy, it's all these rich people out on Long Island, Nisquag Country Club. This guy says, Jackie, you're going to want to hear this story. Come over here. So I come over, and there's like 20 guys standing around before the outing. And this guy, he's an electrical contractor, and he's rich beyond rich. And he's I got to tell you guys a story. He goes, in the late 70s, I was a cab driver in Fort Lauderdale. Now, in Fort Lauderdale, the most infamous club of them all was the Fort Lauderdale comic strip. I mean, I can't wait to write an entire book about the place because it's not even, there's a whole story about the place because I brought Rodney Dangerfield there, and that's one of the main stories in the book, and I guarantee you will love it. But they always made me go on last. Now, back in those days, nowadays, it's like there's the opener, there's the feature act, there's the headliner, there's the smorgasbord, like that. In those days, there was 3 comics. You go on. No, I don't want you go in the middle. Okay. I always went on last because I was the loudest, I was the dirtiest, and I usually went too long. So they said, Martling, you're on last. I don't care. I'll drink, and then I'll go up. So one night, there's a big party. And they said, listen, we're not going to stand around and wait for you to tell those same fucking jokes. We're going to the party. Get a cab if you want to come to the party. So I do my act. I call a cab and tell them where I got to go, the address. And when I get in, I give them a record. And we get to the party. I said, come on. You don't want to drive a cab. Come on in. This is the guy telling the story. He says, I go to pick up this guy at the comic strip, a comic place that just opened in Fort Lauderdale. He gives me a comedy record. I drive him to the party. He won't let me leave. I go in. I smoked pot and got drunk and got laid. It was one of the best nights of my life. He said, I couldn't believe it. And I wanted to say thank you. I didn't know how. And my phone, I had a phone number on the back of the record, for bookings, call. It was my home phone number. So this guy telling the story, he says, and the best part of the story is I wanted to call and thank him. And I called the number on the back of his album, and this woman answered. She was so entertaining for an hour. He said it was my mother. She had nobody to talk to. And she was a pisser. She's the reason I do what I do. And he said it was the greatest thing. So that was a full circle. So we're sending the albums. I get a second album, send them to every third album. By the time 1982, I got 3 records out. And we've sent them to 300 or 400 people. Now, we had no money. I was hosting some shows. I had Governor's Comedy Shop. But for the most part, we're living hand to mouth. And to make packages with 3 LPs, 3 cassettes, and all kinds of promo, each package cost money. And it was a fortune to mail them, but we were blind, just going for it. And I'm in Washington, D.C., and this club owner says, hey, this guy just got fired from the local radio station, and he's a pisser. He used to do broadcasts for my club on Friday mornings in his underwear. And he's going to New York City. You should look him up. His name is Howard Stern. Never heard of the guy. Had no idea who was. I didn't listen to the radio. I listened to cassettes of the Eagles and smoked pot. I didn't care. So I get home, and I put Howard Stern, care of WNBC, and just mailed the records blind. It was a while later, it was a couple months later, my soon-to-be wife, Nancy, calls me in my mother's attic. I'm sitting there, and I answer the phone. She says, yeah, that disc jockey Howard Stern just called. He wants you to come in and sit in on the show. Okay, so I called up, and Howard got right on the phone. He said, hey, we listened to your records, man. You know every joke. You want to come hang out on the air today? I had no idea who I was talking to or why I was talking to him. I said, sure. And I drove into WNBC, AM, Rockefeller Plaza, Letterman and Carson, and like, holy, this is not Levittown on Long Island. This is the Big Apple. And I go up there and I sit there, and it's Howard and Robin and Fred. And 15 or 18 years later, the last day I worked there, it was Howard and Robin and Fred. And at the end of the 4 hours, we clicked. Like if you were a fan of the show, you know how we clicked. At the end of the 4 hours, they said, you are a riot. Come back next week. So I came back once a week for 3 years. We went to mornings, and we went to Pluto. And that's how that happened. Is that a fun story? Is it a fun story? Well, that's how it happened. And then 15 years later, I figured I had enough money to buy the United States, so I quit. But it was great. Well, everything is documented in the book. All the money stories and what I wanted, to the penny. There's not a syllable in the book that's not the absolute gospel truth. It's the stories about how I paid Rodney in jokes and how I negotiated for more money and what went on behind the scenes. It's all stuff. Now, most stuff you know, because there were no secrets on the Stern Show. There's no story in there about Howard banging a goat. You know what I'm saying? It was... Everything that happened and was disclosed on the air. The whole story of the Jessica Hahn bathtub incident and me apologizing to my wife, finally people are going to get the true story of what really happened. And it's pretty interesting. If you're a Stern fan, you'll get a kick out of it. And there's a few laughs in there, and that's about as good as it gets. So I hope that you'll buy a copy. I hope you'll buy 40 of them. You know my sales pitch I've been doing so many radio shows. I tell people, it's the greatest present. You buy one for somebody, you read it, and then you give it away. All right? It's also the simple, if you have friends if you have people that you have to buy presents for that are Howard Stern fans, how easy is that? You buy a book for each of them. That's 2 nights of Christmas shopping that you know you fucking hate that you don't have to do. Plus, a book is the easiest. How many times are you wrapping Christmas presents and you get to a book and like, anybody could wrap a book. So it's a gift that keeps on giving, so to speak. So, and the books, I'm selling tonight for 20, right? Elmer? I'm selling the books for 20, but I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm going to do the Polish special, 2 for 40. So, I really hope you buy one. Now, I'm not done. Go away. And 20, right? Yes? 25. Oh, 25. Oh, I just made more money. $25 for a book. I don't care. Maybe. That's a nice shirt. You look like a thermos. Fuck with me, you idiot. $25. Yeah, it's cheap at half the price. I'll tell you, I've been trying to do this book for so many years, and hit so many dead ends, and I just wound up with so many stories that this is 300 pages. I have 300 more pages sitting there, like modular stories. It was like Sophie's Choice. Like, does this story go in? But then this got to come. Ugh. So my dream is that I'm going to sell enough copies that I get to do volume 2. And the fans, I hope they're going to really love this. So far, knock on wood, the book is selling like crazy, which is really exciting because last night, I was at the Friars Club last night, and it was like, so many rich, powerful people, and the whole thing's crazy, and so much tension. It was just wonderful. And I walked up and said, I'd like to announce that I have a deal to make the book into a movie. And the place went nuts. And I said, I'd like to announce that, but but that is my dream. And it's going to be a great movie. I mean, if you know the stories, the way it's all chronological. Some of the things that fall in chronological order are stories that you know from the show. You say, you got to be a little pompous and assume that maybe you guys know the Howard Stern show or how well you know it. I don't know. It's funny because when we went to mornings, we would sit there for a few minutes before we went on the air, and we'd sit there after we were on the air. We didn't prep. Other radio guys, like, how long? Did you get to 3 hours before, 4 hours before? No. I'd walk in and sit down with my pen, and he'd start yakking, and I'd start writing. And it was that simple. But we would sit and bullshit before we went on the air. And when we first went to mornings, we're guys. It's Howard and Fred and me and sometimes Gary. And you tell stories. So Howard tells a story and Fred tells a story, Gary tells a story. I don't care if this sounds pompous. I don't know why, but every time I told a story on whatever we're talking about, it trumped them. But I mean trumped them horribly. It was so much funnier and wilder. And after a very few days, I caught them looking at each other like, here he goes again, one bullshit story, right? And it was really crazy, but I don't know how much later, a week, a month, 6 months, at some point, they realized they had gotten to know me well enough that they were like, fuck, those are true stories. They started to realize. So the story started making it to the air about the one-legged woman and the whole thing like that. And it made me a little bit infamous. And that story is a monumental story. When you read that, it altered my life. I banged I don't know if I banged her. I spent the night with a one-legged woman. You would have been that drunk too. But it altered my life, and that story alone is worth the $45. So it's so funny. So I don't have any idea where we were, but I hope you enjoy it. So the chronological stories, like with my mother in the urine and the one-legged woman in college, they fall long before the show, but you know the stories from the show. So it's kind of a fun, silly timeline, and it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable. And the whole story of quitting drinking, which is toward the end, it's the sad part of the book. And it's actually great. And there's some pictures in there, not great pictures, but fun pictures. And there's some famous people, some not so famous. And I really hope you dig it. Now, over the years, I really do know more jokes than anybody in the world. I mean, how do you think you get a job in Berlin? Come on. When I was in a band in the 70s, we told jokes and played songs. And when you tell jokes on stage, everybody has a joke for you. Well, I was always a guy who told jokes, so everybody always had a joke for me. My entire life, I was the last guy at the party, the last guy at the bar, listening to jokes, telling jokes, and I would listen to endless drunks going on and on because sometimes there'd be some gold. I'd get a new joke or something that was funny that I knew I could make funnier, and I just had accumulated so much. And by the mid-'70s, I'd take a break and somebody come up to me at the bar and say, I'll tell you a joke. And I'd say, all right, I'm going to count down from 10. And by the time I get to 0, if I don't know the joke, I'll buy you a drink. And I never bought anybody a drink. So if somebody said 2 nuns and a Jew were walking down the street, after a few minutes I go, oh, this is the one about the plumber and the little, they run parallel. And I got so good at it, so I just knew more jokes than anybody in the world. So there's nothing more exciting to me than getting a new joke. And before I forget about this, this house is obviously very just well in tune with Paul McCartney. Everybody loves the Beatles. Everybody loves Paul. I have a friend back there. Paul autographed her shoulder only because he said he really didn't think in public he should autograph her vagina. So, and Graham is Paul and a Beatles thing. I'm just finding all this out. I argued with Howard for years about how if I ever hung out with McCartney for 2 minutes, we'd be best friends. Because I heard that Noel Redding from the Jimi Hendrix Experience was always on the show. Oh, he's dead, but he was a great, crazy little guy. And he used to say, oh, yeah, last night, me and the wife were out with Paul and Linda telling dick jokes. It was the greatest. I was like, Noel, invite me. I know it. So never. And Howard say, well, leave him alone. And he said, no, you don't understand. Joke tellers have a bond. It's like if I'm a Jet fan and you're a Jet fan, or if you're a hockey player and you're a hockey player, it's a bonding situation. And joke tellers like each other, not for each other. They know if they talk to the other guy, they're going to get a new joke out of it, and that's everything. And notice, if you don't understand it, you don't understand it. Like, who can understand somebody that likes curling? But if I like curling, you like curling, we're bonding. Fuck everybody else. So I know I love jokes, and that he would love my jokes. I just know it. Of course, 3 months after I leave the show, McCartney comes on the show. I could have hung myself. So I've always said this. So everybody knows that I always wanted to I've sent McCartney my CDs and my joke machines. I've sent them to give them to the bus driver when he gets, I know, I'll never know. For all I know, he's gotten all of them and used all the jokes all these years, and fuck me, right? So my beautiful girlfriend, Barbara Klein, and I, a year ago, 6 months ago, we went to a screening of The Big Short, which was a great, great movie. And it was a screening at MoMA in New York City, and we shouldn't have been there. I mean, it was the glitter eye. It was the high end of New York City show business, and Lorne Michaels and Tina Fey produced it, and it was a great, great movie. And the people at this cocktail party before the screening, a lot of people, and people that you probably say, God, I should recognize them, but I don't. And we're standing there, and we're having a nice time. And here comes Paul McCartney and Nancy Chevelle down the stairs. And Barbara goes, whoa, McCartney, you can tell him a joke. I said, listen, this is New York City. The reason McCartney and his wife can go out in New York City is because nobody's going to bother him. There's not a person in this room that doesn't think they have a perfectly good reason to go up to a Beatle and tell them where the fuck they were in 1964, all right? He don't want to hear it. People don't bother him. That's why Woody Allen can walk down the street. It's New York City. It's class. It's cool. That said, it's a big crowd. And McCartney comes down the stairs, and him and his wife, we're kind of towards the wall, come around the circumference of the room and walk right in front of me. And Nancy goes right by me, and there's Sir Paul. And I didn't even know I did it. I just touched his lapel and stopped him. I just stopped him. And he turned to me. I said, can I tell you a joke? He said, sure. This is what I told him. And I didn't have this plan. I didn't know. The guy goes for a job interview. And the interviewer says, what do you think is your biggest fault? The guy says, I think my biggest fault is my honesty. The interviewer says, I don't think honesty is a fault. The guy says, I don't give a fuck what you think. And he says, oh, that's a good one. And he walked away. He didn't say, I got one for you. And I said to Barbara, I bet you dimes to donuts he's walking along cementing that joke in his mind, or else he's going to tell it to fucking Tina Fey so he gets it set in his mind. So I'll never know if that's the truth or not. But I finally got to tell the Beatle a joke, and it's a great joke. Isn't that a great joke? Having a new joke is so fun. You know, I have the greatest life. I had a comedy show on the radio. I was on one of Howard's channels on Howard 101, Jackie's Joke Hunt. And it was an hour of jokes, 1 hour a week for 8 years. But they'd replay it 5 times in a week. It was really fun. And we had everybody. I had Sid Bernstein on telling dirty jokes, Joe Franklin, you know, and then of course, you know, Bobby Slayton, people like that. It was so much fun. And it was just wacky. And there's this phenomenal guitar player friend of mine, and he came on the show. And just before the show, he says, I got to tell you, man. He said, I mail out jokes every month. If you'd like to get free jokes in your email, I've had the same email for 30 years, whatever it's been. It's jokeland@AOL.com. I know, AOL. Just shut up. JOKELAND@AOL.com. And if you're on my list, you get jokes every month. Of course, you get the list of where I'm working. You hear that Jackie's got a book out. There's like usually 12 jokes for the kids, for the grandkids, whatever. And they're very, very filthy jokes, and it's fun. And this guy, Ed Hamill, says, Jackie, I love your jokes. He says, you know, I especially love that. And he told me that joke that I just told you. And I said, what joke is that? And then he told me the joke. I said, that's fucking great. I never heard that before. He said, what are you talking about that? I got that off your mailer. I said, Ed, I know a billion jokes. If I'm smart enough to know a billion jokes, don't you think I'm smart enough to know the ones I don't know, right? But that's where that joke came from. So he still has no idea where the hell it came from. But when I get a new joke, I can't wait to grab somebody, and it's like an animal. The most interesting one in a long time, there's a very, very talented guy named Mark Hudson. Anybody know who that is? Mark Hudson from the Hudson Brothers TV show. Way, way, way back. They were the summer replacement for the Sonny and Cher show. He's just wild, wild man. So funny, so talented. So he does a show once a month at the Iridium on 51st and Broadway in New York City. It was the home of Les Paul, who was a dear friend of mine. Great story of Les Paul and Keith Richards. You're going to love this book. Buy the book. $64. And I was on stage, and Hudson had me come up, and I told a bunch of jokes. And I walked off stage. The place is jammed, and this guy grabs me. He says, Martling, I'm such a big fan. I was a fan of you way back in the 70s, long before the Stern Show and comedy. I loved the band, blah, blah, blah. Oh, thanks. He says, listen, people always apologize. I'm nice. I don't mean to bother you, but on the outside chance you haven't heard this, I know you heard them all. All right, tell me. He told me a joke that is the oddest. It's in its own category. It's too dirty for my act. Because when I do my show, I'm not doing my show, but when I do my show, it's like this. Pow, 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 pow. Some jokes longer, some jokes shorter, but it's all right? And it's a rhythm. But you can't do anything that slows up the crowd. Like if I'm doing my show and all of a sudden the waitress drops a tray of drinks, everybody's like, what happened? They lose the next 2 jokes because you got to hear my setups. You know, they're not laughing at my face. You know, it's the whole thing. So any distraction, and I don't tell Jesus jokes. I could care about some Jew that wound up on a tree. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't my fault. It's nothing negative to him and nothing negative. It's just not something I believe in. But I don't do Jesus jokes because it's going to freak people out just like it just freaked you out. Because you're going to go, I don't really believe in it either, but I hope the lightning doesn't, you know. And by the time they get done saying, no, don't be ridiculous, I've lost them. Just for a second, but just enough to throw it off. So this joke is too dirty because by the time people are done going, oh, I've lost them. That said, I can tell the joke on the radio, on AM radio, and you could tell it to your 5-year-old kid. Now imagine a joke that fits all those. The lady calls the doctor, and she says, Doc, I have diarrhea. Can I take a bath? He says, if you got enough. It's disgusting. That's what I said. You tell it to your 5-year-old not to make a joke, he'll shit. It's great fun. Great fun. All right. You guys are terrific. I'm not, the other night I was doing a book signing. I said, well, I'm not going to read from the book because that makes no sense because if, you guys have the book, why would I read what you're already going to read? And some guy goes, yeah, what if we're waiting to see if the sample's any good before we buy it? Oh, I said, fuck you. And it was very witty with the gentleman. But so I'm not going to read from it. But I'm going to sign books, and I will answer any question. I don't care if we go into detail, if you huddle around, whatever you want to do. I just don't want to stand here and go on and on and on and on. If you want to take a picture, you want to ask about Howard, whatever you want to do. If you got food, whatever you got, I'm ready for it. But we got to have a few jokes. Guy calls the doctor. He says, Doc. I should be paying you people. You have no idea how much I enjoy this. That doesn't tell me anything. Look at that, Elmer, 45 minutes. A guy goes to the doctor. Doctor examines him. He says, my God, my friend, there's a piece of lettuce sticking out of your ass. He says, Doc, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The doctor says, my friend, you got to stop masturbating. He says, why, Doc? He says, so I can examine you. Guy catches his kid jerking off. He says, son, don't do that. You'll go blind. He says, Pop, I'm over here. There's a lady in the lobby of Miami Beach Hotel wearing a full-length fur coat. A guy comes up and says, lady, you know how many animals had to die for that coat? She says, you know how many animals I had to fuck for this coat? Guy stands up at the bar and says, all lawyers are assholes. Another guy stands up and says, I resent that. He says, are you a lawyer? He says, no, I'm an asshole. And the lawyer says to his partner, are you fucking the new secretary? He says, no. He says, well, then you fire her. Girl goes to the gynecologist. He examines her. He says, you have acute vaginitis. She says, thank you. Lady's walking down the street, goes, yo, ladies, a tampon hanging out of your mouth. She says, fuck, what do I do with my cigarette? Guy says to a librarian, I need a book on suicide. She says, fuck you won't bring it back. Guy says to a girl, give me a blowjob. She says, be more romantic. He says, give me a blowjob in the rain. The wife says, get out, get the fuck out. As her husband's walking out the door, she says, I hope you die a slow, painful death. He says, so now you want me to stay? Guy meets a girl in the bar. Back to her apartment. They go to her bedroom. One wall, entire wall's fluffy toys. Left to right, floor to ceiling. Fluffy toys, fluffy toys, fluffy toys. He fucks her. They get done. He says, how was I? She says, take anything from the bottom shelf. Did you hear about those new super sensitive condoms? Yeah, after you fuck her, they stay and talk to her. Little old lady walks in a sex shop. She says, where are all the dildos? The guy says, they're on the wall, lady. She says, I'll take a red one. He says, no, lady. The dildos are on the wall next to the fire extinguisher. Polish family sitting in the living room. The wife turns to her husband and says, let's send the kids out back to PLAY so we can fuck. Old couple sitting in the living room. The wife turns to her husband and says, let's go upstairs and fuck. He says, I don't know if I can do both. Yeah. Nowadays, they're passing out Viagra to the old guys in the rest homes to keep them from rolling out of bed. I know I'm getting old. I got dry dreams and wet farts. You'll get there. Tell him. I'll tell you, when I go, I want to go like my grandfather, peacefully in his sleep, not screaming like his passengers. Very cold winter's night, 3 homeless guys huddle up close to stay warm. And wake up in the morning, the guy on the left says, I dreamed somebody's pulling on my dick. Guy on the right says, I dreamed somebody was pulling on my dick. Guy in the middle says, I had a dream I went skiing. That's so fucking funny. It's so funny. I gotta stop and sell books. And if you're a joke teller, sometimes the crowd isn't, maybe you have 8 people for some reason late at night, for whatever reason, or a crowd isn't good, and all your jokes are in your head going. But when the crowd's great, every fucking joke in your head's like, me next, tell me. And meanwhile, it's not my act. I only got time for a few jokes, every joke. Me, I'm not, shut the fuck up. It's like the Midtown Tunnel with 12 lanes. Fuck it. I hope that made some sense. The lady walks in daughter's bedroom. Daughter's using a vibrator. Says, honey, what are you doing? Says, Mom, I'm 40 years old. Don't even have a boyfriend. I'll never get married. That's my husband. A few minutes later, father walks in. She's using a vibrator. Says, honey, what are you doing? She said, Daddy, I'm 40 years old. Don't even have a boyfriend. I'll never get married. That's my husband. Next day, the wife and the daughter go out shopping. They come back a few hours later. They walk in the kitchen. The old man's standing. He's got a martini in one hand. He's got the vibrator buzzing away in his ass. His wife says, what are you doing? He says, I'm having a drink with my new son-in-law. Guy gets in bed with his wife. He says, hey, babe. It's not tonight. I'm going to the gynecologist tomorrow, and I want to be fresh. You're not going to the dentist, are you? Always a good trick, getting sex off the wife. Remember college? I can't wait till I get married. I won't have to jerk off anymore. When I was married, I used to jerk off so much when I fucked my wife, I felt like I was cheating on myself. I jerked off in the shower so much when out in the rain, I used to get a hard-on. Yeah, we're into S&M. She'd sleep, I'd masturbate. It's that simple. I'm almost done. I should have stopped 10 minutes ago, but I'm going to tell a few more. A little bit more risque. You with me? Just a few. Don't laugh, because that'll encourage me. Couple goes to marriage counselor. Marriage counselor says, I think we should begin with something you have in common. The husband says, neither of us likes to suck cock. That joke is worth the price of admission right there. Here we are at work, 2 girls at the water cooler. First girl says, I got a terrible sore throat. The other girl says, you know, whenever I have a sore throat, I just go home and give my husband a blowjob. Clears it right up. You should try it. Next day, they're at the water cooler. First girl says, I tried it. It worked like a charm. You know, your husband couldn't believe it was your idea. Guy got a paper bag over his head and a gun. Comes in a sperm bank. Reception says, no, it's not a regular bag, it's a sperm bag. I know what it is. Open the refrigerator. She opens the refrigerator. Take out one of the bottles. Takes out one of the bottles. Take off the cap. She takes off the cap. He says, drink it down. She drinks it down. He takes off the bag. It's her husband. He says, see, it ain't so bad. Guy says to his friend, I never tell this one. Guy says to his friend, I was with a girl last night. She had the biggest pussy I've ever seen. She had a pussy like that. His friend says, that's not that big. He says, no, that's her asshole. This is her pussy. Guys in line to buy a train ticket. Gets to be his turn. The girl selling tickets has an incredible set of jugs. He says, give me 2 tickets to Pittsburgh. Turns the guy behind, I can't believe I said that. Jeez, what an idiot. I go, relax. You said the wrong thing by accident. It's called a Freudian slip. Happens all the time. You know, it happened to me just the other day. Yeah, I was at breakfast with my wife, and I meant to say, please pass the salt. And by accident, I said, you fucking cunt, you wrecked my life! I want to stay friends. I'm going to do 2 more. There's 45 jokes going, make me one of them. Make me. Guy goes to luncheonette, sits down, says to the waitress, I want a bowl of hot chili. He says, I'm sorry, sir. The guy next to you got the last bowl. Looks over, the guy next to him just about done eating. Chili bowl's still full. You eat that? Yeah, help yourself. Hey, takes it. Starts eating the chili. Gets about halfway down. His fork hits a dead mouse. He's like, oh! He pukes the chili back in the bowl. The other guy says, yeah, that's about as far as I got. All right, you bastards, I got to do this. Jewish girl, 40 years old, never been married. Never had a boyfriend. Never had a date. One day she walks in and says, Ma, I did it. I got married. Married, fantastic, can believe it. Married, but Ma, he's an Arab. But Ma, he's an Arab sheik. You and Daddy are going to live in the lap of luxury for the rest of your lives. The mother and father, after they get married, they move into a mansion. They got Rolls Royces, they got jewelry, they got servants going on trips and living like a king and a queen. It's unbelievable. After a couple months, the daughter walks in. She says, Ma, I love my Arab sheik, Ma, but I got to get a divorce. Hey, divorce. Hey, Ma, he don't work. He don't work. All he wants to do is fuck me in my ass. We wake up in the morning, Ma, he fucks me in my ass. Then he has some coffee, and then he fucks me in my ass. And then he has some breakfast, and then, Ma, he fucks me in my ass. And then he does the crossword, he fucks me in my ass until lunch. And after lunch, he fucks me in my ass. Then he calls some friends, then he fucks me in my ass. Then he watches soap operas, then he fucks me in my ass until dinner. And after dinner, he fucks me in my ass and fucks me in my ass until he falls asleep. So he can wake up in the morning and start all over again. When I got married, my asshole was the size of a dime, and now it's the size of a silver. Now it's the size of a silver dollar. And Mother says, so for 90 cents, you're going to make trouble. I'm going to tell some more. Fuck you. 3 more. 3 more. 3? You sure? These are the worst ones. You with me? 3 more? Little old lady stand at the bar. The little guy comes up. You know, buy a drink? I'd like that. Little one, you know, buy another drink? I'd like that. So I'm around her. Got his nose behind her ear, and they're drinking, snuggling. A few more drinks. She says, you want to go back to my place? I'd like that. Walk along the sidewalk. She says, I think I should tell you something. I have arthritis. Well, I don't care. We're all little arthritis. Little arthritis doesn't bother me. Arthritis. Get to the guy's house. They sit on the couch. In no time at all, these two old timers are making out, French kissing, giving each other hickeys. He's got his hand up her back, unhooks her bra with one hand like a good 8th grader. Her titties, boom, fall like that. Next thing he's pulling down his finger, and she got his takes that. Next thing you know, these two old timers are naked on the floor, and he goes down on her, and it's horrible. He's down there. What the hell's going on down here? It smells terrible. She says, I told you on the way over here, I have arthritis. Is that what arthritis smells like down here? She says, no, I got it in my shoulder. I can't wipe my ass. So a guy gets a job working in the morgue. First day of work, he comes and says, boss, you got to come downstairs. There's a problem with Mrs. Magruder. By God, she's got a jumbo shrimp sticking right out of her snatch. You're crazy. I'm telling you, boss, Mrs. Magruder's got a jumbo shrimp sticking right out of her snatch. You go downstairs, the boss pulls back the sheet. He says, you jerk. That's not a shrimp. That's her clit. Oh, my God. Well, it tasted like shrimp. A cab driver picks up a nun. Cab driver picks up a nun. He looks in the rearview mirror and says, you know, sister, I always fantasize about being with a nun. He says, yeah, you and everybody else. You Catholic? Yes, I am. She says, pull over. He pulls over. She gets in the front seat, gives him the best blowjob he's ever had. She gets done. He feels a little guilty. He says, sister, I got to tell you something. I'm not really Catholic. She says, yeah, my name's Ralph. I'm going to a costume party. I'll see you back there. I love you.
The proceeding was made possible by the Victor Talking Machine Company and music fans worldwide. Investing in Victor means investing in musicians and their music. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel for the latest updates on Victor Talking Machine Company's mission to change the music industry. Visit VictorRecords.com to discover new Victor records and artists, and make sure to visit our catalog of Victor home audio instruments. Look for the dog on your next Victrola, record player turntable, Bluetooth speaker, headphones, and more.